Durin is the newest 5-star Pyro character coming in version 6.2, and he is shaping up to be the best Pyro Sub-DPS in the game, which as most of you know is a very tall bar for a character to reach. In this guide we'll cover his talent and rotations, best weapons, artifacts, teams and constellations, and do a quick breakdown of the new Hexenzirkel system and how it works in his kit and teams. Hello, welcome to Genshin Filter, your quick guide for everything Genshin. So let's get started! The Nefer and Furina banners are here, and I know topping up in game can get really expensive. Here is how you can save money with today's sponsor, Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a safe, secure and reliable way to top up Genesis crystals, with up to 25% off compared to in-game prices. That includes the new Chronal Nexus, plus new users get a 10% off coupon, and returning players get 8% off. Loot Bar has worked with many well-known creators and has great reviews, so it's very safe and trustworthy. The process is super simple. Choose the deal you want, enter your UID and server, and you are done. It's 100% safe and delivered just under 30 minutes. And yes, PlayStation and Xbox players can use it too. Loot Bar also supports other games like Honkai Star Rail and Withering Waves, so hit the link in the description or pin comment to try it yourself and start saving. And thank you Loot Bar for sponsoring this video. Genshin is doing the unthinkable, and in 6.2, alongside the release of Durin, they will greatly buff characters who belong to the Hexenzirkel group, which are a few of the oldest characters from Mondstadt. On top of giving them a personal buff, Genshin is also adding a special passive to each of them, that works similarly to the Ascended Gleam resonance we get when we match two Notcry characters on the same team, to enable special buffs in each character's kit. These special passives will work the same, where if you have two characters on the team that belong to the Hexenzirkel group, this special passive will be enabled, giving them an additional buff, finally making them much stronger, and bringing them back to the meta with new team synergies. I will make a full guide on them in the next video, going over all their new buffs and special passives, so if that's something you want to see, then make sure to subscribe to not miss it. Durin is also considered a part of the Hexenzirkel group, and because of that, he as well gets a special passive that really strengthens his kit and synergy with other Hexenzirkel characters, opening up new and strong team options we will go over in the team section. But before that, let's break down how he works and what is best build. Durin is a 5-star Pyro Sword user who ascends with crit damage, and is mainly played as an all-field sub-DPS, with two different modes that also allows him to be used as a team buffer, or a reaction enabler to deal even higher personal damage, who can even be used as an on-field main DPS. His normal and charge attacks are standard sword hits and completely irrelevant for his playstyle, unless you play him on-field, which we will cover later in the video. His elemental skill makes him enter a state that does nothing on its own, but depending on your next action he will enter purity or darkness mode, but I refer to them as light and dark mode as it's easier to follow. Pressing his skill again will enter light mode, and pressing normal attack will enter dark mode. Both modes will do a pyro hit and regenerate a large amount of energy. He will stay in this mode for 30 seconds, but on their own these modes don't really do anything other than give some energy. His elemental burst is the important part of his kit, and how you get to use these modes to deal damage. Durin will do a big pyro hit, and then every 1.25 seconds will do a strong pyro hit that can be dealt from off-field and will follow the active character for 20 seconds. When it comes to his pyro application, it's a bit slow, applying pyro on the enemy every 2.5 seconds, which is slower than Xiangling and even Mavuika, and more similar to Dia's ICD. Depending on which mode Durin entered from his elemental skill, these pyro hits will behave slightly different. In light mode, the hits will do AoE damage in a relatively large range, and in dark mode, the hits will do slightly stronger single target damage. His Ascension 1 gives different buffs after using his burst, depending on which mode he's in. In light mode, when someone on the team triggers burning, overloaded, pyro swall, or pyro crystallize reactions on the enemy, this enemy will have the resistance reduced for pyro and the other elements of the reaction triggered by 20% for 6 seconds, so it will improve the damage of everyone on the team. In dark mode, Durin's own Vaporize and Melt damage will be increased by 40%. It's just a self buff, but because of his slower application, it does work well for him in these teams, to make sure he is the one that triggers the reactions. His Ascension 4 increases his burst damage after using his skill and entering light or dark mode by up to 25%, gaining 1% burst damage for every 100 attack, with the buff maxing out at 2500 attack. The Hexenzirkel passive that enables when 2 witches are on the team will boost his Ascension 1 buffs, increasing them by 75%, so a total of 35% res shred in light mode and 70% reaction damage in dark mode. This is a massive buff, and alongside the rest of his kit, puts him on the level of off-field Mavuika and sometimes even surpassing her, which is a very impressive feat, as Mavuika at that point is outright carrying most of her teams, and he can even do some very impressive damage on field when paired with C6 Bennett. His Overworld passive grants 25% more rewards when dispatched on a Mondstadt exposition for 20 hours. For talent priorities, his burst is the main part of his kit, and raising it will improve his damage the most. But his skill is also an important talent to level, as it gives energy generation, allowing him to focus on more offensive stats than ER, which means more burst damage, and his normal and charge attacks can be completely ignored. But if you play him on field, his normal and charge attack will be more important than his skill. For rotations, in teams that focus on triggering Burning, Overload, Pyro Swole or Pyro Crystallize reaction, swap to Durin, press his skill, and then press his skill again to go into light mode. Then use his burst to do off-field AoE pyro hits, decreasing the res shred on enemies, and then swap off. On Vape and Melt team, press his skill and then press normal attack to go into dark mode. Then use his burst to do off-field single target pyro hits and get the reaction buff for his burst damage. Make sure you have enough hydro or cryo application on the team, so Durin is the one triggering the reactions. If you play him as an on-field main DPS, you also want to use his dark mode and pair him with C6 Bennett to infuse his normal and charge attacks with pyro, and outside of his burst, his charge attacks are the one that you will want to focus on spamming. His signature weapon, Artem Artist, is his best in slot, but he does have problems, giving 33 crit rate with an effect that increases his burst damage by 12%, and when the burst hits an enemy, it gives a 20% attack increase, while also giving the active character a 16% attack buff for 3 seconds, which is not that impressive for a signature. It really becomes a significant best in slot when you have another Hexenzirkel character on the team. Then the burst hit buff will increase by 75%, reaching a 35% attack increase for Durin and a 28% attack buff for the active character. This improves his damage by about 10%, and while it's a great buff, it does make it pretty restrictive even for Durin, as you won't always use him with another Hexenzirkel character on the team. It's an unusual restriction for a signature weapon, and does reduce his value. In addition, without the Hexenzirkel extra buff, his signature pretty much does around the same damage as the other crit options, making them great alternatives. And in Vape team, an EM weapon like Freedom Sworn can also be a good option if you don't have the other crit alternatives. For free-to-play, Lion's Roar, Finale of the Deep, Moonwaver, and Harbinger of Dawn are also great options. Right now, there is no real dedicated set for him, but there is a talk that in 6.3 we will get a new domain alongside Colombina that gives a set that might be tailored for Hexenzirkel characters that Durin can use properly. For now, because Durin is a support that does the majority of his damage from his burst, his best option is the Noblesse Oblige set, which increases his burst damage and also gives an attack buff to the team. We might assume that the emblem of Severed Fate is a better option, as it gives a large burst damage the more energy recharge you have. But as we saw in the talent section, his skill gives him a very large amount of energy regeneration on cast, bringing him to the point where you don't need to invest almost any energy recharge on him. This makes the emblem set pretty comparable with the Noblesse burst damage buff, but without the attack buff for the team, making Noblesse the better option of the two, unless you already have someone else holding Noblesse on the team, or the team doesn't need the attack buff. Another good option is just going 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece Crimson Witch for some burst and pyro damage. And if you plan to use him on field, giving him Marechaussee Hunter and pairing him with Furina seems to be the best choice for him. For the main stats on the Sen, go with attack or EM, while attack is usually the better stat to help him reach 2500 attack to maximize his Ascension 4 buff. If he gets a lot of external attack buffs, then EM can be better in reaction teams. On the Goblet, go with pyro damage bonus or attack, and on the Circlet, go with crit rate or damage. For substats, like we said, he doesn't need ER, but in some cases, like when he is the only pyro and with no Favonius users on the team, he might need a bit to make sure he bursts every rotation, as without his burst he does no damage, so getting a bit of ER on his substats would be good, and the more ER you get, it will make the emblem set a better option for him as well. Other than that, focus on getting as much crit rate and damage as possible, then go for attack percent and flat attack, and then elemental mastery. Durin is a very versatile character thanks to his two modes, being a very competitive and sometimes even the better option in any team where Xiangling, Mavuika or even Bennett were dominating, which is very impressive as they are considered the top of the meta. Like I said, I will cover all the Hexenzirkel characters buff in the next video, but for now let's look at how you can build his best teams with them, as pairing them together does give a big damage boost to the whole team. When paired with Fischl for an overload team, you of course want to add Chevreuse, and in the last slot you can use any strong Electro or Pyro carry and the team will do great damage. Even Klee and Razor, who also getting some great buffs, are very good now and actually competitive with the other 5-star carries for this team. Pairing him with Sucrose is a very strong match, in teams like Monopyro with Arlecchino or with Neuvillette and Furina, where he uses his Dark Mode to Vape their Hydro, to deal very big damage. Another best team for Neuvillette, who is starting to become the jack of all trades, while also staying one of the strongest units in the game. Venti is finally getting a massive buff, where you can actually play him as a solid DPS when paired with Durin, that is competitive and even a bit better than the other Animo carries, especially in AoE. You can also pair him with Mona in Moalani teams in his Dark Mode, which should work great together. And lastly, you can pair him with Albedo, who is now a very decent character with the new buffs, and can honestly be slotted into any team where you might be missing a last slot as a great sub-DPS. Even without the Hexenzirkel buffs, Durin still can be the best option in teams like Varesa Overload, Kinich Burning, Chaska Rainbow, Navia Hypercarry, and even Lauma Burgeon, or at least a very competitive one, showing that when even used not optimally, he is still an incredibly strong unit in any team that needs an off-field Pyro character. And of course, we can even use him as an on-field main DPS, when having him with C6 Bennett to infuse his charge attacks, and having Furina and Mona as well, preferably Mona C2, which you can get for free from the Constellation and Standard Character Selector. They all buff him dramatically, let him vape all his hits, use Marushase Hunter set, and enable the Hexenzirkel passive for very impressive damage, which can be compared to some of the best Pyro DPSs in the game. Now let's quickly break down his constellations to see if they're worth investing in compared to his signature. C1 gives 18 stacks similar to Shenha's Squeals to the party in light mode, giving 16% damage of Durin's attack, and 9 burst hits to himself in dark mode, giving 200% of his attack. C2 buffs the party with 50% pyro damage and the element that reacts with it, which is a very big buff to the team. C3 gives extra burst level, which is a nice damage boost. C4 increases Durin's elemental burst by 40% and has a 30% chance to not consume some of the stacks that C1 gives Durin or the party, which translates to more stacks for more damage. C5 raises his skill level, which gives more energy regeneration that can be nice but not crazy good. And C6 makes his burst ignore 30% of enemy defense, while in light mode it reduces enemy defense by 30%, and in dark mode it ignores an additional 40% of enemy defense. Durin is already amazing at C0, but when comparing its C1 and signature, they give about the same damage increase when the weapon does have the Hexenzirkel buff active. But because of the uncertainty in this weapon and the great alternatives it has, C1 becomes a much better option. And if you are willing to go all the way to C2, it is an amazing buff that makes him an extremely powerful unit. Durin is looking to be the overall best choice for Pyro Sub-DPS in the game. In some cases, he is a side grade for characters like Xiangling and Mavuika, but in others, he looks to be a really strong upgrade for these teams, unless all you are looking for is as much pyro application, which in that, Xiangling is still the best choice. But not much team really needs so much pyro these days, and that's why characters like Mavuika and Durin are shining brighter in the meta. What makes him such a great upgrade outside of his damage is how much more comfortable and versatile he is to play, offering 2 different modes, better energy management and better team buffs, while also giving flexibility by freeing Mavuika to shine as a main DPS on her own team in the Spiral Abyss and Stygian Onslaught. The Hexenzirkel system is also a really cool addition, opening up creative new team options with him and all the Mondstadt characters, letting them feel relevant again and even reach the meta, which is so fun and refreshing to see. So if you already have the older Hexenzirkel units invested in, and you want to bring them back into serious play, or if you have the other DPSs we covered on his teams, Durin can be a great pull for you. And there is a good chance that future characters like Alice, Nicole and Varka will also be a part of the Hexenzirkel when they come out, and probably would love to have him on their teams. But we will have to wait and see. And that's a wrap. If this video helped you in any way, consider giving it a like and subscribe for more Field the Guides. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!